Τα αγαθά του αγόρασω παρά το χωρητήριο. Τα πολύ μου ότι έβρελε και βόρεια αφού. Άνευ πέρασε μάτρες.
Άσι δεν γάθηκε την ώρα.
Welcome to the Islands of Ferris. The Heptastadion was a bridge-like causeway connecting the island of Ferris to mainland Alexandria. Its name is based on the Greek terms of measurement, hepta, meaning 7, and stadion, which is a measure of length of roughly 180 meters. Since its construction would separate the Grand Port to the east and the port of Eunostos to the west, it was designed with channels at each end. These openings allowed passage from one port to the other. Along with creating separate harbors for the commercial and military shipping, the causeway served as a main aqueduct for the island's inhabitants. Its presence also helped protect the island and its ports from rough wind and sea currents. At the end of antiquity, the Heptastadion disappeared under layers of silt and soil, which formed an important sedimentary deposit. While the Serapeum was the most celebrated of the temples in Alexandria, many other temples were built within the city. Most of these structures have been completely erased over time, and there is no way to discern how many existed. However, research of ancient papyri offered tantalizing hints as to the possible location of at least some of the temples. Both papyri and coins reveal evidence of many temples built for the gods. Poseidon, the god of the sea, likely had an edifice in his honor west of this island, as well as on the mainland. This temple next to you is dedicated to Isis Pharia, the divine protector of the lighthouse. This location hosted annual celebrations in the month of April, known as the Sacrum Pharia, in connection to the lighthouse. In her incarnation as Isis Fortuna, the goddess carries a rudder and a cornucopia, both symbols of good luck for navigators.
Και γόνοι τις αγώνες πάλι.
Considered one of the seven wonders of the ancient world, the Lighthouse of Alexandria was a source of great pride for the inhabitants of the city. Construction began under Ptolemy I's reign and lasted 15 years. It was completed during his son's rule. Once completed, the lighthouse was dedicated to the gods for the salvation of those who sail the sea. Built on the island of Pharos, the stone structure was 3 tiers set on top of one another in a step formation. The second floor consisted of an octagonal tower, and the top floor was a cylindrical tower topped by a statue. The interior provided space for staff rooms and a ramp which allowed the transport of fuel to the upper floors. Essential to safe navigation through the rifts and shallow waters, the Pharos was a functioning lighthouse, with a beam reportedly visible 50 kilometers away. It's unclear what kind of fuel was used or how much. Any other details of how the light worked remain a mystery. For several centuries, the Pharos was one of the highest monuments ever built by man. It measured roughly 110 meters in height, compared to the Pyramid of Giza, which was around 140 meters tall. Gradually, the structure was eroded by earthquakes and then completely destroyed in 1480 CE, when a fort was built over it. Archaeological excavations on the seabed have uncovered many blocks from the ancient building. You can use a mount to cover long distances quickly.
three things are necessary when exploring Egypt: water, a good camera, and an omnipresent voice coming from nowhere. My kingdom for a glass of water.
You can use a mount to cover long distances quickly.
Welcome to Education in Alexandria. The education of young Alexandrians did not differ from the one generally dispensed elsewhere in ancient Greece. At the age of 7, the child was taken in charge by a tutor, who then became responsible for instilling an elementary education as well as good moral principles. Teaching was generally done outside, in the open air. In the gymnasium, students were taught not only sports, but also topics such as rhetoric, philosophy, music, and poetry, all things deemed essential to one's education at the time. Here, both girls and boys are shown attending a class given by one of the rhetoricians of the era. The team made the choice to show both genders attending class within the context of the game world. Even though it is historically inaccurate, the team felt it was not necessary to prioritize historical sexism over inclusive gameplay.
Welcome to the Great Library of Alexandria. Near the district of royal palaces and within the Mouseion was the most famous library of all antiquity. The Library of Alexandria was built to house all of human knowledge. At its pinnacle, the library was believed to contain over 700,000 parchments. Throughout the centuries, fires and wars between Christianity and paganism destroyed the library, leaving nothing behind. The loss of the building, and more importantly, its vast collection, is immeasurable. As no descriptions are available, the team's rendition of the Library of Alexandria was inspired by the visuals of the Library of Chalcis at Ephesus. While much of the collection was purchased at the government's expense, the library also obtained books through other means. Any books owned by travelers coming through the city were seized to be copied for the library. The copy would then be returned to the owner, and the original entered into the library's collection. Alexandria offered unrivaled intellectual and cultural attractions. Eminent scholars from Athens, Rhodes, and other Greek centers traveled to the city to learn and engage with other free thinkers. Both the Mouseion and the library were at the center of groundbreaking ideas and creative expression. The great minds of antiquity were usually well-versed in many disciplines, which were often associated to specific schools of thought. The Peripatetics, the Stoics, and the Cynics were among the most well-known schools of the time. It is clear that Alexandria lived up to its fundamental role as a city for intellectuals, nurturing many great minds whose impact reverberates through our modern world. Hypatia of Alexandria was a Greek mathematician, philosopher, astronomer, and inventor. Though born in Greece, she eventually migrated to Alexandria, like many great minds of the time. It is there that she became the head of the Neoplatonist school of Alexandria. From most accounts, she was highly respected by her fellow Alexandrians, both as a teacher and a philosopher. With her death, the age of great ancient scientific discoveries came to an end. Callimachus was born in Cyrene and educated in Athens. After his studies, he moved to Alexandria to work in the Great Library. A poet and a critic, he strongly rejected the epic format of Homeric poems, and instead fervently supported a shorter, more judiciously formulated style of poetry. His epigrams and elegiac poems were emulated by later poets. His work was extremely popular, second only to Homer's own works. It was in Alexandria that mathematician Euclid, the father of geometry, wrote the Elements, laying out the foundational work of what would become modern algebra and number theory. Euclidean geometry would become one of the most influential systems in the evolution of mathematics. How do you calculate the circumference of the Earth with a camel, 2 sticks, and shadows cast by the sun? This is what Eratosthenes of Cyrene described in his principal work, Geography, while he was director of the Great Library of Alexandria. He is credited for the invention of the armillary sphere around 250 BCE. The earliest known and most complete armillary sphere of antiquity was the Meteoroscopion of Alexandria, with an imposing 9 rings compared to the 3 or 4 of most other astrolabes. Known as the zodiac Krikatoi amongst the Greeks, the Meteoroscopion was used to determine the location of celestial bodies around the Earth. Every self-respecting astronomer of antiquity would have sought to use this tool to better understand the celestial movements.
Δάκρυτε και πληγέται το μέγα σφάλμα, η συνθυμώστε και χολύνει πληνίνε.
Pythagoras of Samos was a well-known and respected philosopher and mathematician. He is best known for the Pythagorean theorem. However, there is proof that the theorem existed in Babylonia and India long before Pythagoras was born, casting some doubts as to who exactly originated the theorem.